I'm Brian, 67 years old, a retired high school teacher from Connecticut. Teaching history was my life's passion until 3 years ago. My daughter Amanda, 32, has always been my pride and joy, especially after losing my wife Carol to cancer 15 years back. We've been incredibly close ever since, at least until recently. Yesterday, I received a text that shattered my world. "Dad, you are not coming with us to Europe. Jeffrey thinks it's better to leave it as just a family vacation. I'm sorry." My son-in-law. The man I once welcomed as a son had decided I wasn't family anymore. If you're watching this from a place where family means everything, hit that like button and subscribe. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but sometimes wounds need air to heal. Losing Carol to breast cancer 15 years ago was the darkest period of my life. She fought bravely for 18 months, but the aggressive form of the disease eventually took her from us when Amanda was only 17. Those final days in hospice are still vivid in my memory. Carol making me promise to take care of our daughter, to make sure she followed her dreams of becoming a doctor. I promised her I would holding her hand until her final breath. The following months were a blur of grief and practical challenges. Amanda was in her senior year of high school preparing college applications while processing the loss of her mother. We became each other's support system, learning to function as a family of two. I would sit up late helping her study for exams, and she would leave little encouraging notes in my lunch bag as I headed off to teach. Somehow we made it through that first year. When Amanda was accepted to pre-med at Boston University, I was bursting with pride. Carol would have been ecstatic. Though the campus was 3 hours away, I drove up almost every other weekend that first semester, bringing home cooked meals and taking her out for study breaks. Some might have seen it as helicopter parenting, but for us, it was healing. Those car rides back and forth gave us time to talk about everything from her classes to memories of Carol. My teaching career at Hamilton High School spanned nearly 40 years. I taught American history to generations of students, many of whom still send me Christmas cards. The school was my second home, the staff and students my extended family. Principal Martinez allowed me flexibility with my schedule during Carol's illness, and the aftermath, something I'll always be grateful for. The kids kept me going during those dark days, their energy and curiosity a welcome distraction from grief. Supporting Amanda through medical school wasn't easy financially. I refinanced the house, picked up summer school teaching, and even drove for a rideshare company on weekends. Carol and I had saved for Amanda's education, but medical school costs far exceeded our preparations. Still, I never once regretted it. Every time Amanda called excitedly about mastering a difficult procedure or acing an exam, I knew Carol would be proud of both of us for keeping our promise. Amanda met Jeffrey during her second year of residency at Boston General Hospital. She called me late one night, unusually animated, about a young investment banker who had come to the ER with a sprained ankle from a charity basketball game. He had asked for her number, and for the first time since her mother's death, I heard a certain lightness in my daughter's voice. When I finally met Jeffrey 3 months later, I was impressed. Harvard Business School educated, impeccably dressed, articulate, and seemingly devoted to Amanda. He brought an expensive bottle of scotch as a gift, had done his research on my interest in Civil War history, and asked thoughtful questions about my teaching career. I remember thinking, this is the kind of man who could take care of my daughter. In retrospect, I should have recognized that Amanda never needed someone to take care of her in the way Jeffrey eventually would insist upon. Their engagement came after 18 months of dating. Jeffrey proposed during a weekend trip to Napa Valley with an impressive diamond ring and a 5-year plan for their lives together. Amanda called me immediately after saying yes, her voice trembling with excitement. I was genuinely happy for her, believing she had found her partner in life. Planning their wedding became my new purpose. I offered to host and pay for most of it, wanting to give Amanda the celebration Carol would have wanted for her. Jeffrey's parents contributed a generous amount for the rehearsal dinner, but seemed strangely detached from the process otherwise. The wedding itself was beautiful, larger than I had initially envisioned, due to Jeffrey's extensive business network. Standing at the altar, watching my daughter walk down the aisle alone, I felt Carol's presence, strongly certain she was witnessing this milestone alongside me in spirit. Looking back, there were early signs of Jeffrey's controlling behavior that I chose to ignore. How he corrected Amanda's stories, the way he ordered for her at restaurants, his subtle criticisms of her clothing choices. I dismissed these as quirks or old-fashioned chivalry, not wanting to see the red flags for what they were. A father wants to believe his daughter has found happiness. Over the years, we established family traditions. Thanksgiving at my house, Christmas Eve at their Boston apartment, and summer vacations, often at a lakeside cabin I rented in Maine. Jeffrey would spend much of these vacations on his phone with clients, but we made it work. Amanda and I would take the opportunity to hike fish or simply sit on the dock, reminiscing about Carol. Those moments I now realize were precious islands of normalcy in an increasingly controlled environment. My retirement 3 years ago was bittersweet. Leaving the classroom after 4 decades felt like saying goodbye to a part of myself. But I looked forward to having more time for family, especially as Amanda and Jeffrey had started talking about having children. I imagined being the kind of grandfather who was present for every milestone, every school play, every baseball game. Emma arrived 4 years ago, perfect in every way. I was in the waiting room when she was born, and the first time I held her, I felt a connection that rivaled becoming a father myself. Thomas followed 2 years later, equally wonderful with Carol's expressive eyes. My weekly visits to their Boston home became the highlight of my week. I'd bring small gifts for the children, educational toys and books that Amanda appreciated. Jeffrey would often be working late, which meant Amanda and I had time alone with the kids, almost like the old days. After Thomas was born, I began noticing subtle changes in Jeffrey's behavior toward me. Where he had once enthusiastically greeted me at the door, he now merely nodded from his home office. His questions about my financial planning for retirement seemed less like concern and more like assessment. Still, I brushed these changes aside, focusing instead on my grandchildren and the joy they brought into my life. I had no idea this was just the beginning of my systematic exclusion from their lives. Jeffrey's promotion to senior portfolio manager came with a substantial salary increase and partnership opportunities that significantly changed their lifestyle. Suddenly, their comfortable Boston apartment wasn't sufficient, and they began looking at properties in Brookline, one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the area. When Amanda called to tell me they'd purchased a 5-bedroom colonial with a pool and guest house, I was surprised, but supportive. "You'll have your own room when you visit, Dad," she assured me, though something in her tone suggested the words weren't entirely her own. My first visit to their new home was uncomfortable in ways I hadn't anticipated. The house was undeniably beautiful, with soaring ceilings, marble countertops, and professionally decorated rooms that looked straight out of a magazine. But as Jeffrey gave me the grand tour, I couldn't help feeling like a museum visitor rather than family. "You can put your shoes there," he instructed when I entered, pointing to a specific tray by the door. "We're trying to keep the new hardwood pristine." The guest room assigned to me was lovely but sterile, lacking the personal touches of the room I'd had in their previous home, where Amanda had hung family photos and stocked the bedside table with books she knew I'd enjoy. That weekend, Jeffrey made several comments about my appearance that caught me off guard. "Next time you visit, we should take you shopping for some new shirts," he said during dinner, eyeing my comfortable button-down that I'd worn for years. Later, when I mentioned driving up more often to see the grandkids, he glanced out the window at my 15-year-old Toyota and said, "That car might not be reliable enough for regular trips on the highway. Safety first, aight?" His words were always cloaked in concern, making it difficult to object, without seeming ungrateful or defensive. Over the next few months, our weekly visits became bi-weekly, then monthly, with Amanda offering increasingly elaborate excuses. "Emma has so many activities now," she'd say, or "Jeffrey's parents are visiting," or "We're having the house photographed for a magazine." Each time I suggested an alternative, there was always another reason why that wouldn't work. I began to notice that Amanda rarely called me directly anymore, instead texting brief updates with photos of the children, but few personal details about her own life. When I did visit, Amanda seemed different, more reserved and anxious. She constantly checked her phone, and I often overheard her reporting to Jeffrey what we were doing or discussing. "Yes, Dad's just reading to Emma now," she'd say, or "We're having tea in the kitchen." The spontaneous, open daughter I'd raised was being replaced by someone who second-guessed her every move and decision. Thanksgiving that year was the first major holiday at their new house, and Jeffrey insisted on hosting. "It's time we took this off your plate, Brian," he said, though I had always enjoyed preparing the traditional meal. When I arrived carrying homemade pumpkin pies made from Carol's recipe, Jeffrey directed me to place them on a side table. "We've ordered dessert from a patisserie in the city," he explained, "but we'll put these out too, of course." They never made it to the table. During dinner, Jeffrey corrected my table manners in front of everyone, including his parents who were visiting from Connecticut. "Brian, at this table, we keep our elbows off and cut one piece of turkey at a time," he said with a tight smile. His mother nodded approvingly, while his father studied his plate. Amanda looked mortified, but remained silent. I felt like a schoolboy being reprimanded, not a 67-year-old man, dining with family. The most painful moment came after dinner, when Emma ran into the living room excitedly calling, "Grandpa! Grandpa! I drew a picture of us." She was clutching a crayon, drawing her face alight with pride. Before she reached me, Jeffrey intercepted her. "Emma, remember what we discussed about inside voices, and Grandpa is talking to Grandma Judith right now." He took the drawing and placed it on a side table. "You can show him before he leaves." Emma's face fell, and she retreated to the playroom. The drawing was forgotten in the bustle of cleaning up, and I never got to see it. As Christmas approached, I began planning what gifts to get for the children, and asked Amanda when I should arrive on Christmas Eve, our usual tradition. Her response was delayed, and when it came, my heart sank. "About Christmas, Dad, we've had a change of plans. Jeffrey's work colleagues are coming over with their families on Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day will just be us four opening presents in our pajamas. But we can do something the weekend after, maybe brunch. It was the first Christmas since Carol died that I would be alone. I spent that Christmas Eve watching old movies and drinking a bit too much scotch. The small artificial tree I'd put up seemed to mock my solitude. I'd wrapped the children's presents and placed them underneath, but they now served as a painful reminder of the distance growing between me and my daughter's family. I fell asleep on the couch and woke to a text from Amanda with photos of the children opening their stockings. No mention of when we might exchange gifts. My neighbor Frank noticed my car hadn't moved for days and knocked on my door the day after Christmas, concern evident on his weathered face. Frank was a widower himself, his wife having passed just 2 years before. "Thought you'd be with your daughter," he said, taking in my unshaven face and rumpled clothes. When I explained the situation, his eyes narrowed. "That doesn't sound right, Brian. Mind if I come in?" "Think we both could use the company." And over coffee, I found myself pouring out the whole story to Frank, from the early days of Jeffrey and Amanda's relationship to the recent holiday exclusion. Frank listened without interruption, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he set down his mug and leaned forward. "Brian, what you're describing isn't normal family dynamics. It sounds like this son-in-law of yours is systematically isolating your daughter, and by extension, you. I've seen this before with my sister's husband. It started small, just like this, and before anyone realized what was happening, she had no one left but him. It's a form of control." His words hit me like a physical blow, bringing into focus a pattern I had been unwilling to acknowledge. That afternoon marked a turning point in my understanding of what was happening with Amanda and Jeffrey, though I was still unsure how to address it without pushing my daughter further away. February brought unexpected news when Amanda called one evening, sounding more animated than she had in months. "Dad, we're planning something exciting," she began. "We're taking a 2-week trip to Europe this summer, Paris, Rome, Barcelona, and we want you to come with us." The invitation caught me completely off guard, flooding me with a mixture of joy and cautious optimism. This could be the turning point in our relationship, a chance to reconnect and create new memories together. "We'll be going in July," Amanda continued. "Jeffrey has business meetings in Paris first, and then we'll have 12 days just for family time. The kids are so excited about showing you the Eiffel Tower, Dad." I could hear genuine enthusiasm in her voice for the first time in ages, and it kindled hope in my heart. When I asked about Jeffrey's thoughts on the plan, Amanda's response was vague, but positive. "Oh, he thinks it's a great opportunity for the kids to spend time with you in new environments." Looking back, I should have noticed she never directly quoted her husband's opinion. That evening, I pulled out the dusty photo albums from the attic, finding pictures of Carol and me on our honeymoon in San Francisco. We had always dreamed of seeing Paris together, saving in a special account for a 20th anniversary trip that never happened due to her illness. The thought of finally seeing the City of Light with our daughter and grandchildren felt like a fitting tribute to Carol, almost as if a piece of our shared dream would still come true. The next day, I drove to the county clerk's office and applied for my first passport. The clerk smiled as I explained the reason for my application. "First time in Europe, Paris will steal your heart," she said. I splurged on new luggage at the department store afterward, a matching set in navy blue that seemed appropriately dignified for international travel. Standing in my bedroom looking at the suitcases, I felt a surge of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. Over the following weeks, Amanda and I had regular phone calls to discuss the itinerary. She seemed particularly keen on having me join them at the Louvre, knowing my lifelong appreciation for history and art. "Emma is learning about Leonardo da Vinci in preschool," she told me. "She keeps telling everyone her grandpa is going to show her the Mona Lisa." These conversations became bright spots in my routine, giving me something concrete to look forward to after months of increasing isolation. I noticed that Jeffrey rarely joined these planning calls, though occasionally I could hear his voice in the background asking Amanda questions I couldn't quite make out. When I offered to contribute financially to the trip, Amanda quickly assured me it wasn't necessary. "Jeffrey says it's all taken care of, Dad. You just need to cover your spending money." And the generosity seemed at odds with Jeffrey's recent behavior, but I chose to see it as a positive sign. In preparation for the trip, I checked out books from the library on European history and culture, making notes of interesting facts I could share with Emma and Thomas. I practiced a few basic French phrases using an app on my phone, imagining the children's delight at hearing their grandfather attempt to order croissants in a Parisian cafe. I even started taking longer walks around my neighborhood to build my stamina, determined not to slow the family down during our sightseeing adventures. 6 weeks before the departure date, I booked an appointment with a personal shopper at Nordstrom, something I had never done before. I need a wardrobe suitable for a European vacation, I explained to the young woman who assisted me. She helped me select lightweight slacks, breathable button-downs, and comfortable walking shoes that looked more stylish than my usual attire. The total at checkout made me wince, but I reminded myself this was a once-in-a-lifetime trip worth investing in. When Amanda invited me to dinner at their house a month before the trip, I arrived with small presents for the children travel games and books about the places we would visit. Emma, now 4.5, was particularly excited to see me bouncing on her toes as she showed me her Europe book, a construction paper creation filled with drawings of the Eiffel Tower, a round Colosseum, and stick figures labeled Mommy, Daddy, Emma, Thomas, and Grandpa. During that dinner, Jeffrey made several comments that gave me pause. When I mentioned looking forward to the street cafes in Paris, he remarked, "They move at a much faster pace in Europe, not really designed for lingering." Later, as I helped Emma with a puzzle on the floor, I overheard him telling Amanda, "We'll need to make sure certain people can keep up with our itinerary. I'm not adjusting the schedule for anyone." His words were clearly meant for me to hear, but I chose to focus on Emma's excited chatter about seeing real princesses in castles. The crushing text message arrived just 3 weeks before our scheduled departure date. I was having coffee on my back porch, watching cardinals at the feeder, and mentally reviewing my packing list when my phone chimed. Amanda's message was brief, but devastating. "Dad, I need to tell you something. You are not coming with us to Europe. Jeffrey thinks it's better to leave it as just a family vacation. I'm sorry." I stared at the phone screen, reading and rereading the message, as though the words might rearrange themselves into something less painful. My hands began to shake, and I felt a tightness in my chest that made it difficult to breathe. The Cardinals continued their cheerful morning routine at the feeder, oblivious to the fact that my world had just collapsed. Just a family vacation, the phrase echoed in my mind with cruel clarity. After all these years, all the support, all the love, I wasn't considered family anymore. I had been officially relegated to outsider status, no longer worthy of inclusion in their lives. The realization felt like a physical blow. I tried calling Amanda immediately, my fingers clumsy on the screen. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again. 5 calls, no answer. I finally left a message, my voice breaking despite my efforts to sound calm. "Amanda, it's Dad. I got your text. Please call me back. I need to understand what's happening." No response came. I sent a text asking for an explanation, watching as the delivered notification appeared, but receiving no reply. That evening, after hours of agonizing silence, I made a decision I'd never made before. I would drive to their house unannounced. In all our years, I had always respected Amanda's space, always called ahead, always waited for an invitation. But this situation felt too important for such formalities. I needed to look my daughter in the eye and understand why I was being cut out of their lives. The 45-minute drive to Brookline was a blur of hurt and confusion. I rehearsed what I would say, trying to find words that expressed my pain without sounding accusatory. I wanted to understand, not attack. I wanted to fix whatever had gone wrong. As I pulled into their circular driveway, the security lights illuminated my car, announcing my arrival. Jeffrey opened the door before I could ring the bell. He stood in the doorway, not inviting me in, his expression, a mixture of annoyance and forced politeness. "Brian, this is unexpected," he said, his voice carrying across the manicured front lawn. "Amanda mentioned she texted you about the trip." "I need to speak with my daughter," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "This isn't something to discuss over text." "She's putting the children to bed," Jeffrey said, still blocking the entrance. "Perhaps you could call tomorrow during business hours." He spoke as though I was a vendor or service provider, not family. "I've been calling all day," I countered. "Please, Jeffrey, 5 minutes with Amanda. That's all I'm asking for." Something in my tone must have registered, because he stepped back slightly, though his expression remained cold. "Wait here," he said, closing the door partially and disappearing into the house. Through the gap, I could see into the foyer, with its gleaming marble floor and grand staircase, a home that had never felt like one to me. When the door reopened, Amanda stood behind Jeffrey, her face pale, and her eyes not meeting mine. She looked smaller, somehow diminished, her shoulders hunched slightly, as though carrying an invisible weight. "Dad," she began, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry about the text. I should have called." "Why, Amanda?" I asked the simple question containing all my hurt. "Why am I suddenly not welcome? We've been planning this for months." Before she could answer, Jeffrey spoke for her. "We've been reconsidering the dynamics of the trip, Brian. With the children at such impressionable ages, we want to curate the right experience for them. 2 weeks is a long time for group travel, and frankly, the pace we've set would be challenging for someone of your age. It's really about creating the optimal family experience." "Optimal family experience," I repeated, the corporate jargon striking me as particularly callous. "And I'm not family." Jeffrey placed his arm around Amanda's shoulders in what looked more like restraint than comfort. "You know what I mean. The nuclear family, parents and children. It's important for us to have this time together without external dynamics." I looked past him to Amanda, searching for any sign of the daughter I knew. "Amanda, is this how you feel too?" Her eyes flickered up briefly, then back to the floor. "It's complicated, Dad. The itinerary is very ambitious, and Jeffrey's right. It might be too much walking for you. We don't want you to feel left out if you can't keep up." "I've been training for this," I said, hearing the desperation in my voice. "I can keep up. I wouldn't hold anyone back." Jeffrey's smile was cold. "It's decided, Brian. We'll bring the children to visit when we return, perhaps Labor Day weekend." His tone made it clear the conversation was over. Just then, a small voice called from inside the house. "Grandpa!" Emma appeared in the foyer, her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched in one arm. She ran toward the door, her face lighting up. "Are you coming to see the big tower with us?" Jeffrey turned sharply. "Emma, you should be in bed. Go back upstairs. Right now." Emma stopped, her smile fading as she looked between her father and me. "But I want to show Grandpa my new Europe clothes," she protested. "Emma now." Jeffrey's voice was firm. "Say goodnight to Grandpa. He was just leaving." My granddaughter's face fell, but she dutifully murmured, "Good night, Grandpa," before turning back toward the stairs, casting one confused glance over her shoulder. "I'd like to speak to Amanda alone," I said, making one final attempt. Jeffrey's arm tightened around my daughter. "That's not necessary. Amanda and I are in complete agreement on this decision. Aren't we, honey?" His eyes bore into her with an intensity that made me deeply uncomfortable. Amanda nodded without speaking, still not meeting my gaze. The woman before me bore little resemblance to the confident, outspoken daughter I'd raised, the one who had argued passionately with her high school principal about curriculum changes and stood up to attending physicians during her residency when she believed they were making errors. This Amanda seemed hollowed out, an echo of herself. "I'll go," I said finally, the fight draining out of me. "But Amanda, please call me. Anytime, day or night." I tried to infuse the words with meaning beyond their surface to let her know I was there for her, that I sensed something was wrong beyond this vacation issue. "Good night, Brian," Jeffrey said, already closing the door. The last thing I saw was Amanda's face, a single tear tracking down her cheek before the heavy wooden door shut with finality. The drive home was dangerous. I could barely see through my tears, pulling over twice when the road blurred completely. I found myself stopping at Silver Lake Park, where Amanda and I had spent countless weekends when she was a child. In the darkness, I made my way to our favorite bench overlooking the water, now still and black under the night sky. Sitting there alone, I finally let the sobs come, my body shaking with grief for what felt like the death of my relationship with my daughter. A young father and his little girl walked by on the path, the child laughing as he swung her by the arms over puddles from the afternoon rain. They were oblivious to my presence in the shadows, the girl's joyful voice calling, "Again, Daddy, again." The simple scene of familial happiness only deepened my sense of loss, reminding me of similar moments with Amanda, decades earlier, when our future seemed full of unlimited promise and connection. The week that followed the confrontation at Amanda's house was the darkest I had experienced since Carol's death. I moved through my days like a ghost, going through the motions of living without truly participating. The new luggage sat in the corner of my bedroom, a mocking reminder of shattered plans. I couldn't bring myself to return it, nor could I bear to look at it. Friends called, leaving concerned messages when I didn't answer. Sue from my old teaching department, Mike from the neighborhood book club, even Principal Martinez, checking if I was still planning to attend the retirement function for the school secretary. I let the calls go to voicemail, unable to summon the energy or desire to explain what had happened, to put into words the rejection that felt too raw to share. One evening, I found myself in the attic pulling out boxes of family photographs and memorabilia. There were Amanda's baby shoes bronzed and mounted on a small plaque, a gift from Carol's mother. School art projects carefully preserved in plastic sleeves. The Mother's Day cards Amanda had made for Carol, and later the Father's Day cards, that became increasingly elaborate after her mother's passing, as though she was trying to compensate for my having to be both parents. In one box, I discovered a bundle of letters, tied with faded blue ribbon. Carol's letters to me during our brief separation, when I was completing my teaching certification in another state. Her handwriting, flowing and graceful, filled dozens of pages with everyday observations, profound reflections, and unwavering love. "Remember Brian," she had written in one letter dated June 1985. "Family is not what happens to us, but what we build together every day with intention and care." Reading her words, I wept again this time, for the wisdom and support I had lost the partner who would have known exactly how to help me navigate this painful situation. That night was particularly difficult. Sleep eluded me, and in the dark hours before dawn, I found myself contemplating drastic changes. Perhaps I should sell the house, move somewhere far away, start over where the memories weren't embedded in every corner. Florida or Arizona, where other retirees created new lives in the sunshine. The thought had a certain desperate appeal, a clean break from the pain of being unwanted by the only family I had left. The next morning, Frank knocked on my door, a casserole dish in hand. "Made too much lasagna," he said, though we both knew it was an excuse to check on me. When I tried to thank him and close the door, he planted his foot firmly in the opening. "I'm coming in, Brian. You look like hell, and I'm guessing you haven't eaten a proper meal in days." Frank refused to leave until I had eaten some of the lasagna and told him what had happened. As I recounted the confrontation with Jeffrey and Amanda's strange, submissive behavior, his expression grew increasingly concerned. "Brian," he said, finally. Setting down his fork, "You know this isn't about a vacation, right? This is about control. Jeffrey is isolating Amanda and cutting you out as part of that process." "But why?" I asked. "What have I done to threaten him? I've been nothing but supportive." "It's not what you've done," Frank explained. "It's what you represent. A connection to Amanda's independent past. A witness to the changes in her personality. A potential voice of reason or escape route if things get worse." Frank revealed that his late wife had counseled women in abusive relationships at the community center, and he had learned a lot from her work. Emotional abuse often follows predictable patterns. Isolation is usually the first step. As Frank spoke, my anger began to shift from Jeffrey to Amanda. But she's a successful doctor, I argued. She's smart, educated, strong. How could she let this happen? Why doesn't she stand up to him? Frank shook his head. It doesn't work that way. These situations develop gradually. The abuser chips away at their victim's confidence bit by bit, until their sense of self is so eroded they can't trust their own judgment anymore. Intelligence and education don't provide immunity. In fact, highly accomplished people sometimes have a harder time admitting they're being controlled because it contradicts their self-image. 2 days later, my phone rang with Amanda's ringtone. When I answered, breathless with hope, it was Emma's voice I heard. "Grandpa, it's me. I'm using Mommy's phone while Daddy's at work." Her innocent voice brought an immediate lump to my throat. "Hi, sweetheart," I managed to say. "It's wonderful to hear from you. Are you excited about your trip?" "Uh-huh," she said, then lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "But I'm sad you're not coming with us anymore. Daddy says you're too old to walk a lot, and you might get tired and grumpy. Are you too old, Grandpa?" Her question hit me like a punch to the gut. "No, Emma. I'm not too old," I said gently. "Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that are hard to understand. But I'll be here when you get back, and you can tell me all about the big tower and the castles." "Why can't you talk to Mommy and tell her you're not too old?" Emma asked, with the straightforward logic of a 4-year-old. "She looks sad when Daddy talks about you not coming." Before I could respond, I heard Amanda's voice in the background, her tone sharp with alarm. "Emma, what are you doing with my phone? Who are you talking to?" The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at the silent device, Emma's innocent observations echoing in my mind. That conversation was a turning point. I began to see that by withdrawing in hurt and confusion, I was actually enabling the toxic dynamic. My silence and compliance made it easier for Jeffrey to isolate Amanda. If I truly wanted to help my daughter, I needed to find strength and clarity rather than retreating into wounded pride. I found a support group for alienated grandparents that met at the community center. Initially, I felt out of place among the group mostly composed of older women, whose adult children had cut contact for various reasons. But as I listened to their stories, I recognized common themes of manipulation control and the gradual severing of family ties. Diane, the group facilitator, took a particular interest in my situation. In her early 60s, she had survived an emotionally abusive marriage and now helped others recognize and respond to similar dynamics. The most important thing, she told me after one meeting, is to keep the door open without applying pressure. Make it clear you're available without judgment whenever your daughter is ready to reconnect. Following her advice, I wrote a letter to Amanda that I never sent, pouring out my love, concern, and unconditional support. The process was cathartic, helping me clarify my own thoughts and feelings. I realized that my hurt had been clouding my perception, making me focus on my own rejection rather than what might be happening to Amanda. This wasn't about me being excluded from a vacation. It was about my daughter potentially being trapped in a controlling relationship. With this new perspective, I made a conscious decision to stop behaving like a victim and start being the parent Amanda might need, even from a distance. I updated my will, making sure my financial affairs were in order. I reconnected with friends and colleagues, rebuilding the support network I had neglected in my grief. Most importantly, I educated myself about emotional abuse and control, understanding that when Amanda was ready, I needed to be prepared to help rather than adding to her burden with my own hurt feelings. The day of their departure for Europe came and went without communication. I marked it on my calendar, imagining them boarding the plane. Emma excited Thomas. Probably fussy Jeffrey in command. Amanda going through the motions. I sent a simple text. Wishing you safe travels and wonderful adventures. Love you all. There was no response. A week into their trip, my phone chimed with a notification. Amanda had sent a photo, no text message accompanying it. The image showed Emma standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, her small face alight with wonder as she pointed upward. The caption was brief, but spoke volumes. She misses you. In that moment, I knew that whatever happened next, I would not give up on my daughter and grandchildren. The door between us might be narrowing, but it wasn't closed yet. 2 weeks after that single photo, I received a text from Amanda letting me know they had returned from Europe. There was no invitation to visit, no details about their trip, just the bare fact of their return. I sat with my phone considering my response carefully. This was a crucial moment, one that could either widen the growing chasm between us or begin to bridge it. After consulting with Diane from the support group, I decided on a direct but non-confrontational approach. I replied with a warm welcome home message, then added, I'd love to hear about your adventures. Could we meet for lunch, just the two of us? By specifically requesting a one-on-one meeting, I was making it clear I wanted to speak with Amanda without Jeffrey's presence, while giving her an opportunity she could reasonably accept or decline. To my surprise and relief, Amanda responded within the hour. That would be nice. Thursday at Rosemary's Cafe at 1 p.m. The brief message gave little indication of her emotional state, but the fact that she had agreed to meet me alone felt like a significant step forward. The days leading up to Thursday were filled with anxiety and preparation. I wanted to be calm, clear, and supportive, without coming across as accusatory or judgmental. Diane helped me practice what to say, emphasizing the importance of using I statements rather than attacking Jeffrey directly, which would likely cause Amanda to become defensive. Rosemary's Cafe was a small, quiet establishment halfway between our homes, a neutral location where we had occasionally met for lunch in happier times. I arrived 20 minutes early, securing a corner table that offered some privacy. When Amanda walked in, I was shocked by her appearance. Though impeccably dressed as always, she had lost weight and dark circles shadowed her eyes, despite careful makeup application. She moved with a kind of cautious vigilance I had never seen before, scanning the room before approaching me. "Hi, Dad," she said, her attempt at a smile not reaching her eyes. We exchanged awkward hugs before sitting down, an uncomfortable silence falling between us as we studied our menus with unwarranted intensity. After ordering, I took a deep breath and began with the words I had rehearsed. "Amanda, I've missed you. And before anything else, I want you to know that I love you unconditionally. Nothing will ever change that." Her eyes flickered up to meet mine briefly before returning to the tablecloth. "I know, Dad. I'm sorry about the vacation. It just seemed like the best decision at the time." "I'm not here to talk about the vacation," I said gently. "I'm here because I'm concerned about you. You don't seem like yourself lately, and as your father, that worries me." Amanda's hands trembled slightly as she arranged and rearranged her silverware. "I'm fine. Just tired from the trip and getting back to work. The jet lag has been difficult." I chose my next words carefully. "When I came to your house that night after getting your text, I was hurt and confused. But what concerned me most wasn't being excluded from the trip. It was seeing how uncomfortable you seemed, how you couldn't look me in the eye, how different you are from the confident, outspoken person I've always known you to be." Her face crumpled slightly before she regained control. "Things are complicated right now, Dad. Jeffrey has a lot of pressure at work, and managing the household and the children while maintaining my own career is challenging. We're finding our balance." "Amanda," I said, leaning forward slightly. I need to ask you something important, and I'm asking you to really think before you answer. Are you happy? The simple question hung in the air between us. Amanda opened her mouth as if to give an automatic affirmative response, then closed it again, her eyes filled with tears that she quickly blinked away, glancing nervously toward the door, as though expecting Jeffrey to appear at any moment. I don't know anymore, she finally whispered, the admission seeming to cost her greatly. I don't know what happy is supposed to feel like now. Something broke open between us with those words, a crack in the wall that had been building. Over the next hour, as our untouched food grew cold, Amanda began to share fragments of her reality. Jeffrey's increasing control over their finances, despite her substantial income as a physician, his monitoring of her phone and email, his criticism of her parenting, her appearance, her professional decisions, the way he undermined her authority with the children, his systematic campaign to reduce contact with her friends and colleagues, always with plausible excuses about family priorities or the children's needs. The European trip was miserable, she confessed, her voice barely audible. He criticized everything I did, complained about the hotels I had researched, made scenes in restaurants if the service wasn't perfect. The children were walking on eggshells the whole time. Emma asked why Daddy was always angry, and I didn't know what to tell her. Why didn't you reach out to me? I asked, trying to keep the pain from my voice. Amanda's laugh was hollow. And say what? That my successful, charming husband is making me feel crazy. That I'm a doctor who can't stand up to her own spouse. It sounds ridiculous even saying it out loud. She shook her head. Besides, he monitors all my communications. The only reason I could text you that photo of Emma was because he was meeting with clients that day. As she spoke, I recognized the classic signs of emotional abuse that Diane and the support group had described: the gradual erosion of self-confidence, the isolation, the creation of dependency. My heart ached for my daughter trapped in a gilded cage of her own making, yet not entirely of her design. Amanda, I said gently, what you're describing sounds like emotional abuse. It's more common than people realize, and it can happen to anyone regardless of their intelligence, education, or strength of character. She flinched at the word abuse, but didn't deny it. I keep thinking I can fix it, she said. That if I just try harder, communicate better, be more understanding of his stress, things will go back to how they were in the beginning. The good days still happen occasionally, and then I think maybe I've been exaggerating the bad ones. I reached across the table to take her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. You can't fix someone else's controlling behavior, sweetheart. That's on them, not you. I paused, then asked the question that had been worrying me most. Amanda, do you feel safe? Are you and the children in any danger? She considered this seriously. He's never been physically violent, she said finally. It's more subtle than that. But there are times when his anger is so intense that I worry about what might happen if I truly crossed him or tried to leave. This admission sent a chill through me, but I maintained a calm exterior. From the support group, I knew that the most dangerous time for someone in an abusive relationship is when they attempt to leave. This conversation needed to be handled with extreme care. I'd like to share some information with you, I said, reaching into my jacket pocket for the pamphlet Diane had given me. This is from a support organization for people in controlling relationships. It explains some of the patterns you're describing and provides resources. I slid it across the table. You don't have to take it if it would cause problems at home. Just know that help is available whenever you want it. Amanda stared at the pamphlet for a long moment, then quickly folded it and slipped it into her purse. I should go, she said, checking her watch. Jeffrey tracks my locations through my phone, and I told him this was a quick lunch between patient appointments. As we stood to leave, Amanda suddenly stepped forward and hugged me tightly, the first genuine embrace we had shared in months. "I've missed you, Dad," she whispered against my shoulder. "The kids have too. Emma asks about you all the time." "I'm here," I promised. "Whenever you need me, for whatever reason, I'm here. No judgments. No, I told you so. Just support." I pulled back to look her in the eyes. "And Amanda, your mother, would be so proud of the strength you're showing right now. It takes courage to even acknowledge that something isn't right." She nodded, tears threatening again. "Maybe we could meet again next week. Same time. Same place." "I'd like that very much," I replied, hope blooming cautiously in my chest. As I watched her walk to her car, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Vindication that my concerns had been justified. Anger toward Jeffrey for his treatment of my daughter. Fear for Amanda and the children's well-being. But most prominently, a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't about me being excluded from a vacation anymore. This was about supporting my daughter through what might be the most difficult challenge of her life. As I drove home, I began to formulate a plan to be the safety net Amanda might soon need. 6 months have passed since that pivotal lunch at Rosemary's Cafe. What began as a single clandestine meeting evolved into a regular connection point, always scheduled during Jeffrey's work hours. At first, we were careful to maintain the fiction that Amanda was meeting colleagues or attending medical conferences. But as her awareness of her situation deepened, so did her determination to reclaim some independence. With each meeting, I watched my daughter slowly re-emerge from the shell Jeffrey had constructed around her. The Amanda I knew, intelligent and compassionate, began to resurface in glimpses like sun breaking through storm clouds. She started therapy, secretly paying cash and scheduling appointments during her lunch breaks from the hospital. Her therapist specialized in emotional abuse recovery, helping Amanda recognize the patterns of control and manipulation that had become normalized in her marriage. "I keep a journal now," Amanda confided during one of our lunches. "Hidden at work, where he can't find it. Writing down the incidents helps me see them clearly, instead of doubting my own perceptions." When this was significant progress from the woman who had been unable to name her unhappiness just months earlier. Our lunches expanded to include occasional meetings at the park with Emma and Thomas. These outings were ostensibly supervised by Amanda's authorized babysitter while she attended medical conferences. But in reality, they were precious moments of reconnection for all of us. Watching Emma race across the playground toward me, calling, "Grandpa, Grandpa," with unbridled joy, or holding Thomas on my lap as he solemnly showed me his favorite toy cars. I felt a healing taking place, a restoration of bonds that Jeffrey had tried to sever. During one of these park visits, Emma asked innocently, "Why doesn't Daddy like you, Grandpa?" The question caught me off guard. But before I could formulate a child-appropriate response, Amanda knelt beside her daughter. "Daddy is dealing with some big feelings that make it hard for him to share sometimes," she explained. "It's not about Grandpa, and it's not about you or Thomas. It's something Daddy needs to work on." I was proud of her balanced answer, neither demonizing Jeffrey nor accepting blame for the situation. 3 months into our renewed connection, the precarious balance was disrupted. Amanda, the children, and I were enjoying ice cream at the park when Jeffrey's black SUV pulled up unexpectedly. He had apparently come home early from work and, finding the house empty, tracked Amanda's phone location. His face was thunderous as he approached our bench. "What is this?" he demanded, looking from Amanda to me with undisguised fury. "A family outing no one bothered to mention to me." Amanda stood her ice cream cone forgotten. "Jeffrey, I was going to tell you tonight. The children wanted to see the duck pond, and we ran into my dad by coincidence." The lie was smooth, but her voice trembled slightly. "Coincidence," Jeffrey repeated his tone, making it clear he didn't believe her. Interesting how these coincidences keep happening during my work hours. He turned to me, barely concealing his contempt. Brian, I thought we had an understanding about visits being scheduled and approved. Before I could respond, Emma ran to her father, chocolate ice cream smeared across her face. Daddy Grandpa showed me how to make the ducks come closer without scaring them. Can we show you? Jeffrey's expression shifted as he looked down at his daughter, the mask of the perfect father sliding into place. Not today, princess. We need to get home now. Daddy has important calls this evening. He looked pointedly at Amanda. All of us. What happened next surprised us all most of all. Amanda herself. She straightened her shoulders and said clearly, "The children and I will be home in 1 hour after they've finished their ice cream and had a chance to play on the swings. They've been looking forward to this all day." The flash of rage that crossed Jeffrey's face was unmistakable, though quickly suppressed. "Amanda, we need to leave now." His voice was low-controlled, but with an edge that made me instinctively move closer to Thomas, who was still sitting on the bench beside me. 1 hour. Amanda repeated, her voice steadier now. "We'll see you at home." For a tense moment, I thought Jeffrey might create a scene, but awareness of the public setting seemed to restrain him. "Fine," he said, finally. His smile not reaching his eyes. 1 hour, not a minute more. We have things to discuss at home. The threat was implicit in his tone. After he left, Amanda sank onto the bench, her hands shaking. "He's never seen me contradict him in public before," she said, her voice a mixture of fear and wonder. "I didn't know I could still do that." "You can," I assured her, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you realize, Amanda." That evening marked a turning point. When Amanda arrived home, Jeffrey's reaction was explosive. According to what she told me later, he raged for hours, alternating between accusations of betrayal and declarations that she was becoming an unfit mother under my influence. When he finally issued an ultimatum that she cut off contact with me permanently, something broke within Amanda. Without premeditation, she packed overnight bags for herself and the children and drove to my house. I was reading in the living room when the doorbell rang at 11:30 that night. Opening the door to find Amanda standing there with Emma and Thomas half asleep in their car seats was both shocking and somehow expected, as though a part of me had been preparing for this moment all along. "Can we stay here tonight, Dad?" Amanda asked, her voice steady, despite the tears tracking down her cheeks. "Just tonight, until I can figure things out." "You can stay as long as you need to," I replied, stepping aside to welcome them home. The following weeks were challenging in ways none of us had anticipated. Jeffrey cycled through predictable phases of reaction to Amanda's departure. First came rage with incessant calls and texts demanding her return. When that proved ineffective, he shifted to manipulation, sending flowers, tearful apologies, and promises of change. When those tactics failed, he resorted to threats regarding custody of the children and financial retribution. Throughout this turbulent period, I worked hard to support Amanda without controlling her decisions. This was her journey, her life, and while I had opinions about Jeffrey's character and behavior, I kept most of them to myself. Instead, I focused on providing a safe, stable environment for her and the children while she navigated legal consultations and therapy appointments. "I don't know if I want a divorce," she confided one evening after the children were asleep. "Part of me still loves the person I thought he was, the person he can sometimes be when things are good." Her honesty was painful to hear, but important to respect. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you," I assured her. "There's no timeline, no perfect answer, just steps toward whatever health and happiness look like for you and the children." After 3 weeks at my house, Amanda filed for legal separation, a step that gave her time to consider her options, while establishing preliminary arrangements for the children and finances. Jeffrey, realizing that his previous tactics weren't working, finally agreed to attend therapy, both individual sessions and couples counseling with Amanda. I was skeptical of his sudden commitment to change, but Amanda approached the process with cautious hope. "People can change if they truly want to," she said. "And if he doesn't, at least, I'll know I gave it every possible chance." As summer turned to fall, Amanda found an apartment halfway between my house and her workplace, a modest 2-bedroom that represented her first truly independent living space since college. The day she signed the lease, she called me, her voice lighter than I had heard it in years. "It's small, and the kitchen needs updating, but it's mine. Dad, my decision, my money, my space." The healing process wasn't linear. There were setbacks and difficult days. The first family therapy session that included Jeffrey, Amanda, and the children was particularly challenging. The therapist, a compassionate but firm woman named Dr. Levine, created a structured environment where everyone, even 4-year-old Emma, could express their feelings safely. I waited anxiously at home for Amanda's report afterward. "It was hard," she admitted when she called that evening. Jeffrey was defensive at first, but Dr. Levine didn't let him dominate the conversation. Emma said she misses when everyone was happy and not shouting. That seemed to really affect him. Over the months that followed, Jeffrey's participation in therapy appeared to yield some genuine insights and changes. The manipulative behaviors didn't disappear overnight, but they became less frequent and were more quickly acknowledged when pointed out. Amanda remained cautiously optimistic, but continued to build her independent life, reconnecting with old friends and colleagues, establishing new routines with the children, and gradually reclaiming her confidence. My own life underwent transformation during this period as well. The weekly support group had become an important part of my routine, not just for guidance regarding Amanda's situation, but for my own growth and healing. Diane. The group facilitator became a trusted friend, and eventually something more. Our shared experiences of supporting loved ones through difficult circumstances created a bond that deepened gradually into romantic attachment, something I hadn't expected or sought at this stage of life. Carol would approve, Amanda told me when I nervously shared this development. "Mom always said you had too much love to keep it to yourself forever." The first holiday season after Amanda's separation arrived with a mixture of apprehension and hope. We decided to host a modest Thanksgiving gathering at my house with Amanda, the children, Diane, and a few close friends. After much discussion, Amanda extended an invitation to Jeffrey as well, with clear boundaries about behavior and duration. To my surprise, Jeffrey accepted and adhered to the guidelines, arriving with appropriate gifts for the children and maintaining civil, even cordial interactions throughout the meal. He seemed genuinely moved when Emma presented everyone with hand-traced turkey drawings, including one labeled Daddy that she had worked on with particular care. As we sat around the table, this unconventional family configuration that would have been unimaginable a year earlier, I found myself overwhelmed with gratitude. Not because everything was perfect or because all wounds were healed, but because we were facing our challenges with honesty and courage rather than denial and fear. After dinner, Emma proudly showed everyone her latest artwork, a crayon drawing of what she called her whole family. The picture included Amanda, Jeffrey, Thomas herself, and even Diane, all holding hands in a circle. It wasn't an accurate representation of our current reality, but perhaps it captured something more important, a child's hopeful vision of connection that transcended the complications of adult relationships. As I look back on the painful text message that began this journey, I realize that what seemed like an ending was actually a beginning. The exclusion that broke my heart ultimately created the crisis necessary to bring hidden truths to light. Had I been included in that European vacation, the facade might have continued indefinitely, with Amanda slowly disappearing into Jeffrey's controlled environment, and the children growing up in a household where autonomy was surrendered for false peace. Instead, that rejection forced confrontation with reality. It pushed me to educate myself about emotional abuse, to reach beyond my hurt feelings, to see what was really happening to my daughter. It gave Amanda the contrast she needed to recognize how far she had drifted from her authentic self, how many boundaries had been crossed so gradually she hardly noticed their absence. I've learned that family isn't about possession or control, but about mutual respect and support. It's about loving people enough to see them clearly flaws, and all while still believing in their capacity for growth and change. It's about maintaining your own dignity and boundaries while extending compassion to others struggling with their demons. Most importantly, I've learned that sometimes the text message that breaks your heart is the very thing that saves your family by forcing truth into the open, where it can be addressed with courage and love. The journey hasn't been easy, and it isn't over. But standing in my truth, supporting my daughter in finding hers, and watching my grandchildren thrive in a more honest environment has been worth every painful step. Has your family ever faced a moment of painful truth that ultimately led to healing? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes sharing our experiences helps others recognize patterns in their own lives. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more reflections on family dynamics and personal growth. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to build something better from the pieces of what's been broken.